Two girls were showering together at the gym, chatting away. Suddenly, one of them noticed something and asked, surprised, "Hey, how come you don't have any fluff down there?" The other girl burst out laughing and replied, "Oh, you silly! Haven't you heard? Where there's heavy traffic, nothing has time to grow." One evening, a husband, feeling a little too confident for his own good, decided to tease his wife. "Maybe we should start washing your clothes and slim fast," he chuckled. "Could take a few inches off your backside." Cue the awkward silence. His wife, however, was not one to let such comments go unanswered. The next morning, as the husband reached into his drawer for a fresh pair of underwear, a mysterious puff of powder burst into the air. He coughed and blinked. "What the heck?" "April," he called out, holding the underwear at arm's length. "Why is there talcum powder in my boxers?" From the bathroom, his wife called back sweetly, "Oh, honey, that's not talcum powder. It's Miracle Grow." Lil Johnny's mother took him with her to the bank on a busy Friday. They were in line behind a rather obese lady wearing a business suit, complete with a pager. As the mother patiently waited, Lil Johnny looked at the women in front of him and observed loudly, "Hey, Mom, she's really fat." The lady looked at Johnny, made eye contact with his mother, and gave an understanding smile. Lil Johnny received a quiet reprimand. After a minute or two, Lil Johnny spread his hands as far as they will go and loudly said, "I bet her butt is that wide." At this, the lady glared at Johnny. His embarrassed mother severely scolds her son. Again, after a couple of minutes, Lil Johnny stated loudly, "Look how the fat hangs over her belt." The lady turned and told Johnny's mother to control her rude child, and his mother threatened him with his very life and existence. Things in the bank are quiet. The lady moved to the front of the line when her pager begins to emit its distinctive tone. Little Johnny yelled in a panic at the top of his voice, "Run for your life, Mom! She's backing up!" A blonde and her husband are lying in bed listening to the next-door neighbor's dog. It has been in the backyard barking for hours and hours. The blonde jumps up out of bed and says, "I've had enough of this." She goes downstairs. The blonde finally comes back up to bed, and her husband says, "The dog is still barking. What have you been doing?" The blonde says, "I put the dog in our backyard. Let's see how they like it." She was standing in the kitchen, preparing our usual soft-boiled eggs and toast for breakfast, wearing only the t-shirt that she normally slept in. As I walked in, almost awake, she turned to me and said softly, "You've got to make love to me this very moment." My eyes lit up as I thought, I am either still dreaming or this is going to be my lucky day. Not wanting to lose the moment, I embraced her and then gave it my all, right there on the kitchen table. Afterwards, she said, "Thanks," and returned to the stove, her t-shirt still around her neck. Happy but a little puzzled, I asked, "What was that all about?" She explained, "The egg timer's broken." A blonde hurried into the emergency room late one night with the tip of her index finger shot off. "How did this happen?" the emergency room doctor asked her. "Well, I was trying to commit suicide," the blonde replied. "What?" sputtered the doctor. "You tried to commit suicide by shooting off your finger." "No, silly," the blonde said. "First I put the gun to my chest, and then I thought, I just paid $6,000 for these implants. I'm not shooting myself in the chest." "So then?" asked the doctor. "Then I put the gun in my mouth, and I thought, I just paid $3,000 to get my teeth straightened. I'm not shooting myself in the mouth. So then? Then I put the gun to my ear, and I thought, this is going to make a loud noise. So I put my finger in my other ear before I pulled the trigger." A blonde was shopping at Target and came across a shiny silver thermos. She was quite fascinated by it, so she picked it up and took it to the clerk to ask what it was. The clerk said, "Why, that's a thermos. It keeps hot things hot and cold things cold." "Wow," said the blonde. "That's amazing. I'm going to buy it. So she bought the thermos and took it to work the next day. Her boss saw it on her desk. What's that? He asked. Why, that's a thermos. It keeps hot things hot and cold things cold, she replied. Her boss inquired, What do you have in it? The blonde replied, 2 popsicles and some coffee. So this stunning 19-year-old blonde named Anna walks into a Detroit police station asking for a job. Just like that. No appointment, no plan, just confidence and a killer smile. The lieutenant takes one look at her resume and, yeah, let's just say she's not exactly SWAT material. But hey, it took guts to show up, so a curious captain decides to interview her anyway. Captain. All right, let's start simple. What's 3 plus 3? Anna, without missing a beat. 6, Captain. Correct? Now, what's 100 divided by 5? Anna. Oh, that's easy. 20, Captain. Also correct. Last question. Who killed JFK? Anna, wide-eyed. Gee, I'm not sure. The captain chuckles and says, Okay, go home. Figure that one out and come back when you know. Anna rushes home, grabs her phone, and calls her best friend. Friend, so, how'd it go? Anna, breathless. OMG, you won't believe it. I got the job. And they already gave me my first case. A vagrant comes up to the front door of a neat-looking farmhouse and raps gently on the door. When the farm owner answers, the vagrant asks him, Please, sir, could you give me something to eat? I haven't had a good meal in several days. The owner says, I have made a fortune in my lifetime by supplying goods for people. I've never given anything away for nothing. However, if you go around the back, you will see a gallon of paint and a clean paintbrush. If you will paint my porch in the back of the house, I will give you a good meal. So the vagrant goes around, back, and a while later, he again knocks on the door. The owner asks, Finished already? Good. Come on in. Sit down. The cook will bring your meal right in. The vagrant says, Thank you very much, sir. But there's something that I think you should know. It's not a Porsche you got there. It's a BMW. Lisa and Judy were doing some carpenter work on a Habitat for Humanity house. Lisa was nailing down house siding and would reach into her nail pouch, pull out a nail, and either toss it over her shoulder or nail it in. Judy, figuring this was worth looking into, asked, Why are you throwing those nails away? Lisa explained, When I pull a nail out of my pouch, about half of them have the head on the wrong end, and I throw them away. Judy became completely upset and yelled, You moron! Those nails aren't defective. They're for the other side of the house. Drive-in movie. Did you hear about the 2 blondes that froze to death in a drive-in movie? They had gone to see Closed for the Winter. You might have to think twice about this one. A science teacher in a girls' school asked his class, Who can tell me what organ in the human body expands up to 10 times its normal size when stimulated? Mary, can you answer? Mary turned bright red and stood up. Sir, how can you ask such a question? That's inappropriate. I'm telling my parents, and they'll go straight to the principal. The teacher was momentarily taken aback, but quickly realized the misunderstanding. He then turned to another student. Lily eagerly raised her hand. Yes, Lily? Sir, the correct answer is the iris of the eye. Excellent. Well done, Lily, said the teacher with a smile. He then turned back to Mary and said, Mary, I have 3 things to tell you. You didn't do your homework. You might need to clean up your thoughts. And lastly, one day you're going to be very, very disappointed. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went on a camping trip. After a hearty meal and a bottle of wine, they crawled into their tent and drifted off to sleep. A few hours later, Holmes woke up, nudged Watson, and said, Watson, look up and tell me what you see. Watson rubbed his eyes, gazed at the night sky, and replied, I see millions of stars. Holmes nodded. And what does that tell you? Watson thought for a moment. Astronomically, it means there are countless galaxies and possibly billions of planets. Astrologically, I notice that Saturn is in Leo. Horologically, I deduce it's about 3:15 a.m. Theologically, I believe it shows the vastness of God's creation and how small we truly are. Meteorologically, I predict tomorrow will be a beautiful day. Watson then turned to Holmes. What does it tell you? Holmes sighed. It tells me that someone has stolen our tent. Two nuns walk into a bar. The bartender is surprised and then asks them, I'm sorry, sisters, but are you sure this is the right place for you? We know it's not, but the Reverend told us to help sinful souls. We thought we could find one here. The next day, two rabbis walk into the bar. The bartender also asks them, we know this is a sinful place, but the synagogue is just being renovated, and we thought we would sit here to discuss religious issues. On the third day, two Irish priests walk into the bar. The bartender asks one of them, Father, I'm surprised to see you here. Why, my son? It's only 10 a.m., and I've never seen you here before 11. Leah walks into a pet shop and says to Jaime, the owner, I want to buy a canary. We have many types, says Jaime. Is there any particular one you're after? Yes, replies Leah. It's got to be a very good singer. I'm prepared to pay good gelt, money, for a great singing bird. Lady, I've got the very one, says Jaime. I've been in this business for a long time, and this bird has the best singing voice I've ever heard. We don't call it Pavarotti for nothing. I'll get it for you. Jaime brings the cage, places it on the shop counter, and says to Leah, just you listen. With that, the bird begins singing one beautiful song after another. Pleasantly surprised, Leah murmurs, What, Mazel, look, this canary really can sing. But then, a few seconds later, Leah shouts out, Oy vey, this canary's only got one leg. Are you trying to cheat me or what? Jaime calmly looks at Leah and replies, Lady, do you want a singer or a dancer? Rabbi Shapiro had to go to Buffalo to officiate at a wedding, but missed his bus. He asked at the bus station if there was a bus to Toronto, that perhaps the driver could let him off in Buffalo, which was on the way. The clerk said it was okay as long as the driver agreed. The driver said that it was no problem. The rabbi thanked him, but told him that he usually falls asleep on these long trips and asked if the driver would wake him up when they got to Buffalo. The driver agreed, but again the rabbi stressed that he might be in a deep sleep and that the driver really would need to jostle him and make sure he gets off in Buffalo. The driver said it was no problem. The bus took off and eventually arrived in Toronto. The driver said, Everybody out. We have arrived in Toronto. Rabbi Shapiro woke up very irate and got off the bus, yelling at the driver for not waking him up. When he walked away, another driver who was standing close by said to the driver, Boy, I never saw anyone get that angry, to which the other driver said, You think he was angry? You should have seen the other guy I threw off in Buffalo. A very elderly couple is celebrating their 75th wedding anniversary with a quiet, elegant dinner. The old man leans in, his voice soft, and says to his wife, Sweetheart, there's something that's always bothered me. You know, our 10th child. He never quite looked like the rest of our children. I've thought about it for years, and it's been on my mind, especially now, after all this time. I want you to know, though, that these 75 years together have been the best of my life. Nothing can take that away. But I have to ask, was he from a different father? The wife looks down. Unable to meet his gaze, she pauses, deep in thought, and after a long silence, she finally admits, Yes, he was. The old man, visibly shaken, can hardly believe what he's hearing. The reality of her words stings more than he anticipated. With a tear in his eye, he asks softly, Who was the father? The wife takes a deep breath, her head still lowered, and after what seems like an eternity, she quietly replies, "You." A man is head over heels in love and wants to surprise his bride-to-be, Wendy, with something unforgettable for their honeymoon. So he gets her name, Wendy, tattooed along the side of his most personal asset. The tattoo is clever. When he's relaxed, only the letters W and Y are visible. But when he's fully excited, Wendy appears in elegant script. He's thrilled with the result and decides to save the big reveal for their honeymoon night. The couple jets off to Jamaica for the wedding and honeymoon. As they arrive at the airport, the man stops at the restroom to make sure everything's ready. While standing at the urinal, he glances over and is stunned. The man next to him has the exact same WY tattoo in the same font. Surprised, he chuckles and says, "Hey man, that's a solid tattoo. Your girl's name Wendy too?" The other man laughs heartily and replies, "Nah, mon. It says, 'Welcome to Jamaica, mon. Have a nice day.'" A rich, bitter old man died, and at the reading of his will, only 3 people who had anything to do with him, his priest, his doctor, and his accountant, were present. The lawyer told them that the old man had no heirs and had made it his aim to die penniless, but hadn't quite managed to spend all his money. He'd been instructed to take the remaining £150,000, split it between the only 3 men he trusted, and that they were to ensure each portion was put into his coffin before the burial, so that no one would benefit from his hard-earned cash. He handed them each a thick bundle of money and ended the will reading. After the badly attended burial service, the 3 men made their way to the nearby pub for a drink and to talk about the dead man. "A very strange and mean-spirited man," said the accountant. "Tell me, did you have any qualms about burying him with the money?" "Well," said the priest, "that was an awful lot of money, and the church roof is in bad need of repairs. So I have to confess, I did take £5,000 that would allow for its repair." The doctor then confessed, "You know, I do a lot of work at the orphanage, and they always need money, so I withheld £10,000. "Gentlemen," said the accountant, "I'm surprised such upstanding men as yourselves could be so dishonest." "Weren't you tempted?" asked the priest. "Not at all, gentlemen. I put in a check for the full amount." "Boss," raising his voice, not bothering to conceal his frustration. "Little Johnny, I need you in my office right away." Little Johnny, hurrying into the office, his face a mix of apprehension and nervous excitement. "Yes, sir." Boss, leaning forward across his large desk, eyes fixed intently on Little Johnny. "Little Johnny, I just had a lengthy conversation with the customer who left earlier today. I was informed, and I even witnessed from a distance, that you were engaged in an argument with him. You know very well that I have stressed this point time and again. The customer is always right. Is that clear?" Little Johnny, nodding vigorously, eager to comply. "Yes, sir. The customer is always right." Boss, taking a deep, steadying breath, his tone now shifting to a more investigative one. "Good. Now, I need you to explain, step by step, what exactly happened during that encounter. What did you end up arguing about with that customer?" Little Johnny, shifting uncomfortably in his chair, then speaking slowly and deliberately. "Well, sir, the customer said something very insulting. He went on to say that my boss is stupid and an idiot." Boss, his face reddening with shock and anger, slamming his hand lightly on the desk. "That foolish man!" "And tell me, Little Johnny, in the heat of the moment, how did you respond to his outrage?" Little Johnny, taking a moment to collect his thoughts, his tone suddenly becoming serious and somber. "I looked him right in the eye, and I told him that he was right." Boss, staring in disbelief, then shaking his head slowly. "Are you serious? You actually agreed with him in front of the customer?" Explain yourself, little Johnny. I want to understand why you would choose to undermine our policy of unwavering customer service in such a blatant manner. Little Johnny, lowering his gaze, his voice quiet but steady. Sir, I know the rule is the customer is always right, but when he said those things, I felt compelled to agree with him, so that at least he wouldn't feel further wronged or ignored. I thought it might de-escalate the situation by showing him that his opinion was being acknowledged. Boss, sighing deeply as he rubs his forehead, a mix of disappointment and exasperation evident in his tone. Lil Johnny, our policy isn't about simply agreeing with everything a customer says. It's about maintaining our integrity, resolving conflicts, and ensuring that our entire team operates in a professional manner, even when provoked. You should never have affirmed such disparaging remarks, no matter how heated the moment was. Do you understand what that means for our business and our reputation? Little Johnny, nodding slowly, his eyes welling with regret. Yes, sir. I understand now. I realize I made a mistake. I let my emotions override the principles I should always follow. Boss, softening slightly, though his disappointment still lingers. All right, little Johnny. We all make errors in judgment sometimes, but it's important to learn from them. I want you to work on handling confrontations without resorting to agreeing with offensive remarks, and instead aim for a calm, controlled resolution. We take our customer service very seriously, as it reflects on all of us here. Little Johnny, voice trembling with sincerity. I promise, sir, I'll do better. I really won't let this happen again. Boss, nodding, his tone more measured now. I hope so, little Johnny. Consider this a formal reminder. Uphold the rule that the customer is always right, not by echoing their insults, but by ensuring their concerns are handled with the utmost professionalism. Now, go back to your duties and remember this lesson. We all need to be on our best behavior. Little Johnny, yes, sir. Thank you for understanding, and I promise to make amends. Boss. Watching him leave, his expression a blend of stern resolve and reluctant empathy. See that you do, little Johnny. See that you do. Husband and wife sit together in the kitchen and have breakfast. Out of the blue, she hits him with rolling pin. After a few minutes conscious again, he asks, "What was that? Why did you hit me that hard?" She, "That was for 25 years of bad love." He continues eating his breakfast, thinking about this for a few minutes, and then strikes back and knocks her out. A few minutes later, she is coming back to consciousness, and he explains. That was because you know the difference between good and bad love. A statistics professor was describing sampling theory to his class, explaining how a sample can be studied and used to generalize to a population. One of the students in the back of the room kept shaking his head. "What's the matter?" asked the professor. "I don't believe it," said the student. "Why not study the whole population in the first place?" The professor continued explaining the ideas of random and representative samples. The student still shook his head. The professor launched into the mechanics of proportional stratified samples, randomized cluster sampling, the standard error of the mean, and the central limit theorem. The student remained unconvinced, saying, "Too much theory, too risky. I couldn't trust just a few numbers in place of all of them." Attempting a more practical example, the professor then explained the scientific rigor and meticulous sample selection of the Nielsen television ratings, which are used to determine how multiple millions of advertising dollars are spent. The student remained unimpressed, saying, "You mean that just a sample of a few thousand can tell us exactly what over 250 million people are doing?" Finally, the professor, somewhat disgruntled with the skepticism, replied, "Well, the next time you go to the campus clinic and they want to do a blood test, tell them that's not good enough. Tell them to take it all." The nurse asked the patient to remove his clothing and put on a gown to be checked by a doctor. In front of you? He asks shyly. The nurse says, "Well, no, but I've seen the naked human body before." The patient said, "Not one like mine. You would die laughing at my naked body." "Of course I won't laugh," said the nurse to the patient. "I am a professional. In over 20 years, I have never laughed at a patient." "Okay then," said the patient, and he proceeded to drop his trousers, revealing a huge male body with the smallest adult male organ the nurse had ever seen in her life. In length and width, it was almost identical to a AAA battery. Unable to control herself, the nurse tried to stop a giggle, but it just came out. And then she started laughing at the fact that she was laughing. Feeling very badly that she had laughed at the patient's private part, she composed herself as well as she could. "I am so sorry," the nurse said. "I do not know what came over to me. On my honor as a nurse and a lady, I promise that it won't happen again. Now tell me, what seems to be the problem?" "It's swollen," the patient replied.